This is the show where pro wrestling ate itself. Welcome back to Very Weird Wrestling. My name is Jack the Jobber, and it's Bash at the Beach 2000. You've likely heard of this show before. WCW Bash at the Beach 2000, the show where the fourth wall was obliterated beyond repair. And really makes us question, once we've watched it, what even is the point of pro wrestling? Like, genuinely, what is the point? So a big thank you to the people over at the Jack the Jobber Patreon. Thank you very much for supporting this channel and for voting on this pay-per-view. I think most people watching this will know what happens at this event. Yes, the main attraction is the Hogan versus Jarrett match and the subsequent promo from Vince Russo as well, and we'll get to all of that, but I'm particularly interested in seeing how this show just holds up as a whole, because I've never really thought about it beyond the famous stuff or the infamous stuff. So I'm delighted to report that we have 11 matches to go through, none of them longer than quarter of an hour, and a whole load of nonsense in between those bouts as well. Let's go. WCW was in a bad place by the late 90s. The Monday Night Wars all but won by the World Wrestling Federation at this time. So in the autumn or the fall of 1999, Eric Bischoff, the company president, was removed from his position, and his creative duties were taken over by a man named Vince Russo and his best friend Ed Ferrara, but mainly Vince Russo. That's what we're talking about here. Originally a writer whose gigs included WWF Magazine, Vince Russo rose through the ranks and became head of WWF's creative in 1997. And inspired by television shows such as Jerry Springer predominantly, Russo unquestionably had a big hand in the feel and the tone of the Attitude Era. But that's a double-edged sword. He was responsible for the good stuff and for the bad stuff as well. Russo was famous for having lots and lots of ideas with inevitably mixed results. But with his ideas being filtered by Vince McMahon and, you know, the old school promoter types hanging around backstage in the Fed at the time, I think Russo had unquestionably a net positive on WWF in this era. Because, and remember this, because he never had too much power. What would happen if he did? Oh, we're gonna see. Frustrated by an increasingly relentless schedule, Russo left the company and was hired by the struggling WCW in October '99. Did he turn World Championship Wrestling's fortunes around? No! On the contrary, in fact, things began to spiral even further out of control. Any remaining substance that the product had was immediately sacrificed in a desperate attempt to kind of recreate the magic that Russo had conjured up north. This led to a mass of rapid title changes, pointless swerves, and attempts at doing worked shoot angles. In January 2000, things had gotten too much, and Russo was given an ultimatum: agree to work as part of a committee instead of being the undisputed head of creative, or leave. Russo left. But then he was back in the spring of 2000, and not alone. He was joined by a returning Eric Bischoff, now both men not only having a creative hand behind the scenes, but as on-screen figures as well. On a now infamous episode of Monday Nitro, the pair, quote, rebooted WCW, stripping the titles from all the champions, making everything vacant, and ushering in a brand new era for the company. Do you see the problem with having the writers as characters on the show, by the way, and acknowledging that they are writers? If the writers are characters on screen, then we are telling the audience that everything they're watching is written, and the central pillar of wrestling is that it's meant to be real. And if we're now no longer even pretending that the kayfabe world exists, then why is this worth investing our emotion and time into? Why does any of this matter? Like, it might work in some sort of highbrow experimental stage play or TV show exploring metafiction and all that sort of stuff, but this wasn't an exploration of fiction versus reality. This was supposed to be a wrestling show, and it no longer really felt like it. This is a key thing to bear in mind, because Russo loved breaking the fourth wall, because it got a lot of instant short-term attention. But Bash at the Beach 2000 is the point where this insistence on breaking the fourth wall really reaches a breaking point. It's July 9th, 2000. We are in Daytona Beach, Florida, and let's just try to make sense of any of this. We actually begin with a cold open, which I take as a remarkable show of confidence from a flagging WCW at this time. Who does WCW think it is? Breaking Bad? Yo, Mr. White. Yo, Mr. White, bitch. I swear I used to be able to do that. So the first notable person we see on screen is the commissioner at this time, Ernest the Cat Miller, accompanied by his lackey, Ice Train. Yeah, the Cat was the commissioner at this time, but I always found that a little bit confusing because we already know that Russo is the writer and the on-screen authority figure as well, so why do we need a commissioner even? Seems redundant. God, my head hurts, and we're not even at the first match yet. Anyway, the Cat explains that the allies of both men in the opening match are to all be banned from ringside. He wants this to be a one-on-one contest for the Cruiserweight Championship. Good. Maybe this will be a wrestling show after all, with minimal shenanigans. Shut up, Jack. The Cat is then confronted by comedy undercard trio, the Young Dragons, who all want to ambush him and beat him up. He gives them all a low blow and just sort of saunters away. Yes, that's the commissioner of the show easily getting the better of three active wrestlers. Fantastic start to Bash at the Beach 2000. One of the Young Dragons is future WWE superstar and Ring of Honor World Champion Jamie Noble. There he is. He's that one. It's worth mentioning the crowd outside the venue watching all of this, by the way, because you know on like modern WWE pre-shows where the crowd are all going crazy for like 2 hours straight? In this instance, they're quite bored. They're just sort of, feels like they're watching like a bad juggler in Covent Garden, which is quite an apt metaphor for Vince Russo's WCW. The show begins properly now in the arena, and we are welcomed in by our announce team, Tony Schiavone, the quite underrated Scott Hudson, and the very appropriately rated Mark Madden. Look, it's not a super team on the announce table or anything, but in this show you could have had prime Jim Ross, prime Bobby the Brain Heenan, and like 1974 Muhammad Ali, and it still wouldn't save the show. The first match, as mentioned, is for the Cruiserweight title, which, as we can see here, is held by Juventud Guerrera. Except, no, it's not. He just stole the physical belt in the build-up to the event. By the way, just to demonstrate the kind of central contrast at the heart of WCW around this time, which is that they made terrible mistakes with quite a lot of talent, actually, on their roster. Here's one of Juvi's stablemates, an unmasked heel Rey Mysterio piggybacking the stable's valet Tigress to the ring. This man would go on to become quite possibly the most famous worldwide luchador of all time, and one of the purest, most beloved babyfaces in WWE history. Is he wrestling on this show? No, don't be stupid now. After a quick promo by Juvi's stable leader Conan, it's time for his opponent, Chavo Guerrero, except he's currently a member of the Misfits in action, so he's called Lieutenant Loco at this moment. And this isn't just a singles feud for the belt. No, this is part of like a wider bit of stable warfare between the Filthy Animals and the Misfit. I've done it already, I know. I used to love them when I was first getting into wrestling as a very small child because they wore camouflage. And they were like, army people. It was cool, man. I think I was like 6. The Filthy Animals are the heel group. They are disrespectful punks who don't listen to any authority. Suck it. While the Misfits in action are a ragtag group of babyfaces who were, in storyline, released by Eric Bischoff and then re-signed under different names as this army gimmick, the Misfits in action. But remember, at the start of the show, Ernest the Cat Miller said that everybody had to leave ringside, and that's what happens, and then the match begins as a normal singles contest. For now. We get quite an established pattern early on in the match where Chavo takes control. Juvi bails to the outside sometimes, tries to stall, tries to kill time, tries to use sneaky heel tactics, but Chavo's just better than him and always seems to regain control. But then, uh-oh. Here come the Filthy Animals back to ringside in cunning disguises. They've not even changed their clothes. They look like a GTA online heist gang. Anyway, this is enough to distract Chavo, who gets rolled up, but mercifully he kicks out at 2. We see the heels arguing with the refs at ringside who eject them, and look, Rey Mysterio hasn't even kept his mask. Rey Mysterio, of all people, has not kept his mask on. So yeah, the heels get kicked out, and their guy's in control now though, so like, mission successful. But wait, here's another group of strange, disguised, masked figures heading to the ring. Could this be the Misfits in action? I don't know, could be. While this is happening and everybody's distracted, one of the Misfits, Major Guns, comes down the ramp and distracts Juvi because she's a lady. This distraction allows Chavo to retake control. This has got to be the finishing stretch, right? Not quite, because they just they have to get their stuff in. So now they go into a sequence where they kick out of each other's finishes before Chavo finally seals the win and retains the title. I think this kind of sums up the problem with Russo's WCW, because if he'd really wanted to, he could have built an amazing show just on pure work rate and in-ring ability, but instead he makes his talent get bogged down by all these silly shenanigans that don't really add much of value at all. Like, we got to see some funny disguises. And I know I barely mentioned the in-ring action itself in this recap, because that's not where our attention was supposed to be, clearly. Chavo wins. Good for you, Chavo. Not the worst start to the show, but a sign of much worse things to come. Well done, Chavo. Ooh, Chavo. After that semi-comedy match, it's time for a comedy skit backstage, actually. So we cut to Ernest the Cat Miller's office, where the Young Dragons are there surrounding him, all still selling that low blow from earlier that he delivered to each of them. How powerful is Ernest the Cat Miller? They are interrupted by storyline developments for the main event scene, as current WCW champion at this time, Jeff Jarrett, bursts in, demanding to know where Hulk Hogan is, Hogan being his challenger for tonight's event. But Hogan hasn't been seen yet at the show, and hasn't been seen on the shows building up to this pay-per-view either in the week beforehand, so it's all a bit up in the air. Jarrett also has this woman with him who's dressed as a Viking, and Jarrett explains that she's the fat lady who's going to sing to call time on Hogan's career tonight. Aha! The Cat says that Hogan isn't here yet, but don't worry, he will be here by the time of the match, and Jarrett's like, yeah, he better be. First of all, I think Jarrett should be delighted if Hogan doesn't show up, because then he gets to keep hold of the belt regardless. And secondly, I'm worried now about the possibility of shenanigans in their title match. Like, if I was watching this not knowing anything that goes on, I'd be thinking, oh, this doesn't bode well. Not quite on the level of what actually happens, though. On to match number 2 anyway, and it's for the Hardcore Championship. It's supposed to be the champion Big Vito taking on the legendary Terry Funk, but we see that Vito actually ambushed Terry on a show in the build-up to this event, and now Terry can't compete anymore. Vito cuts a promo and wants to know who his opponent is tonight, because he explains that his pal Johnny the Bull and Terry beat each other up so bad that now Terry can't compete tonight. Wait, what? Which is it then? Why are they telling us 2 separate storylines, which probably both happen, but they haven't really explained which one takes precedent here? Why are they just doing this and just throwing this on the show without actually explaining what's going on? We are not even 2 matches in and my patience is so thin already. Vito's opponent is revealed to be not opponent 1, but opponents 2. They are Norman Smiley, kind of a mainstay of the WCW Hardcore division at this time. He would go on to be a trainer in WWE, of course. And Ralphus, kind of comedy security sidekick kind of dude. Most famous, I think, for being associated with Chris Jericho during Y2J's time in WCW. Norman Smiley, very underrated wrestler, I think, if you've never seen him. He's got skills, and that explains why he's gone on to kind of teach the craft to so many other people. Ralphus, crucially, barely not a wrestler. Vito's like, fine, let's do a handicap match then. Match begins, he marches up the ramp, smashes Ralphus in the midsection with a kendo stick. Down goes Ralphus. Down goes Ralphus. Ralphus did not attempt to defend himself. Vito and Norman brawl backstage, and Ralphus joins them shortly afterwards. He's got a trash can. Bang! Decent trash can shot from Ralphus, in fairness. Bit of vengeance for our boy there. But rather than capitalize on any momentum gained, Norman Smiley instead decides to do this for a bit. And then he directs Ralphus in attacking Vito with a trash can lid. Ralphus does attack Vito with the trash can lid for a bit and then waits like this for ages, conveniently with his head positioned right behind the trash can lid, which Vito eventually, of course, punches into his face. This is all real, the magic of how do they do it? The announce team even go, what's Ralphus doing? So that's good. Vito gets tactical now, separating his opponents and shutting Norman Smiley in a service elevator. Ralphus is isolated. He's got to run. He runs back into the arena. Run, Ralphus, run! Both men get in the ring, and I'm like, oh, who's going to win this ultimate showdown? Yep. There it is. There it is. Vito puts Ralphus through the table, makes the cover, and as he wins the match, Norman Smiley's made it back to the arena, and with a stunning lack of urgency, kind of ambling his way down to the ring. He reaches the edge of the ring as Vito's won the match, and Norman's just stood there at ringside like, oh man. 2 matches in, 2 brilliant matches, and what's going on backstage now? Bill Goldberg has arrived at the venue. He strides in with Scott Hall's contract sticking visibly out of his pocket. Let's talk about this storyline then. So Goldberg's a heel at this point, now aligned with Bischoff and Russo's evil stable, the New Blood. Yeah, so the New Blood. So once the kind of bloated, overextended NWO storyline had finally come to an end, Russo created two new stables to be the centerpiece of his product, one of those being the New Blood, led by himself and Eric Bischoff. They are underrated, younger, or otherwise underappreciated wrestlers who want to take the spotlight away from this older generation who are kind of clinging on past their sell-by date. For some reason, the New Blood are the heels, and we are not meant to want them to succeed in driving the industry forwards. So it goes without saying that no, you know what, Raphael, you are not going to survive this video. He's going to keep falling if I get annoyed and bang the table. It goes without saying that the New Blood's rivals were the Millionaires Club, those older stars that I talked about, hanging on to their spots. Hogan, Sting, who else? Scotty Steiner's in there, Kevin Nash. It's all the big names. I lost my train of thought because of the turtle, you know? Speaking of Kevin Nash, he is Goldberg's opponent tonight, and he has an interview in the back with Mean Gene. Mean Gene explains that their match is for the contract of Scott Hall. If Kevin Nash wins, then Scott Hall's back in the company, baby, and that's his best friend. Let the good times roll. If Goldberg wins, we may never see Scott Hall in WCW again. Dun dun dun. In reality, Hall had already wrestled his last match for the company back in February, and the next time we'd see him would be for ECW in November. So this match really is built on nothing. Somebody needs to tell Kev, though, that it's July, not Oscars season, Nash, because he's acting his arse off here. He's all downcast. He's saying, you know what, Gene, I've not been myself recently because my best buddy, Scott Hall, his contract's being held hostage by that damn Bill Goldberg. I'm like, wow, Kev. He's bringing us into the storyline with him. Take us on a journey, buddy, let's go. But Nash is so wrapped up in his own performance that he forgets his own finisher or mixes it up with Goldberg's. He says he's going to jackhammer Goldberg in the middle of the ring tonight. Don't you mean jackknife powerbomb Goldberg in the middle of the... Unless he's going to actually steal his finisher, which I would love to see. Spoilers, not even close, doesn't happen. Doesn't even begin to approach happening. Kev rounds off the interview by saying that he's going to take a survey once he's beaten Goldberg because he knows how much they annoy Bill. I don't know what that means. I'm wondering if it's some sort of reference to something behind the scenes. Feels very pointed, like we should know what it means, but I actually don't. If anybody knows what he meant by this around this sort of time, please pop an explanation in the comments down below. And while you're there, like the video and share and subscribe and all the YouTube. Next up is the designated women's match of the night. Let's hope that Russo is taking women's wrestling seriously at this point. It's between two women fighting over the hottest property in all of WCW, David Flair. So David was engaged to Daphne, but their relationship has been ruined because David has left Daphne for that dastardly Miss Hancock, also known as the future Stacy Keibler. Boo! By Miss Hancock's insistence, this match is also a wedding gown match, the stipulation being that the winner is the first one to rip off the other wrestler's wedding gown. Get those star ratings ready, everybody. Daphne has a black wedding dress on because she's a goth, and there's a big wedding cake next to the ring. I'm sure that will remain intact throughout. The match begins with David and Miss Hancock having a little kissy, and Daphne doesn't like that, so she hits David in the balls, and the match is underway. This whole match is like a bad imitation of a Three Stooges sketch. It's barely wrestling at all, really. They have a brawl vaguely near the cake at the start of the match, the tension being, oh, one of them is going to end up in the cake, but they're never that close to the cake. David gets involved, drags Daphne off his girlfriend, and the ref drags Miss Hancock away, and then both women slap both of the men simultaneously. It's just comedy, it's just great. Oh, you want comedy? Don't worry about that, there's way more, my friend. Daphne low blows David and rips his pants off, then Hancock does the same to the referee, and then Daphne grabs Miss Hancock's head and throws her head first into David's nether regions. You know, if Twitter existed in the year 2000, there would be people saying like, guys, stop criticizing. There's so much wrestling to enjoy. Can't we just enjoy all of it? Honestly, I hate the rise of anti-intellectualism among wrestling fans these days. Maybe it's always been there, I don't know, but I hate this thing of like, let's just all be positive. We have to enjoy everything. No, we can say something's bad when it's bad. Otherwise, I would not be in work right now. Anyway, the heels now have some clippers and they try to shave Daphne's head, but she is saved by the arrival of her ally, Crowbar, who then takes his jeans off I think just because he feels left out, and then he chokes out David Flair with them while Miss Hancock gets on the mic to cut a promo in the middle of the match, and we get this Renaissance painting of a screenshot. Miss Hancock calls for her music and is about to take off her own wedding gown, which would of course result in her losing this match that she so desperately wanted to win in the video package in the build-up to this, because she's all evil and vindictive and like, I'm going to show Daphne that I'm the only real woman for David Flair. And now she's like, I don't care, I'm just going to take my gown off and lose the match. But it doesn't matter because Russo doesn't care about rules and stories and the point of things. He doesn't care about the point of things. I need to grow up. Before Miss Hancock can complete her dance, Daphne is waiting behind her with a handful of cake from the wedding cake. And what follows this is honestly like a really bad, lackluster food fight. So not only is this a travesty of a wrestling match, but it's followed up by quite an underwhelming food fight as well. I'm going as far to say that I've never seen such a disappointing food fight in all of media. And with that, the match just kind of ends, man. We don't know really who, that's just sort of it. Everybody kind of stumbles to the back, and now it's time for more comedy with Ernest the Cat Miller. I'm gonna of all the videos, right, in this series, this has been the biggest challenge to write and derive pleasure from writing. And one thing I've learned while I've been doing this series as well is that, like, even on the really bad shows, there's often little hidden gems or little bits of the show that you don't remember at all that are actually quite good. But at Bash at the Beach 2000, it's kind of all bad, and some of it's just famously bad. It's devolved into nonsense by this point, and at this stage of the pay-per-view, the momentum of the show has ground to a halt, to the stage where it barely resembles a wrestling show at all now. Anyway, let's see what the Cat's up to. He is worrying that Hogan's not going to show up for his match against Jarrett, and he's worrying what Jarrett's going to do when he realises that Hogan might not be there. Meanwhile, the Young Dragons are all sort of in rubbish hiding places, waiting to ambush the Cat, and then they just don't. So, next we cut back to ringside, where the announce team argue, annoyingly amongst themselves, for way too long about whether Hogan's going to arrive or not and what's going to happen. Is he scared of Jarrett? Will you stop? No, he's not scared of Jarrett, and blah, blah. It goes on and on and on for way too long. And I'm like, what are they doing? And then I get my answer when we cut back to the ring and we see the ring crew frantically trying and failing to clean up the cake from the rubbish food fight from earlier. Just listen to the words and the sentences that come out of my mouth, and I'm meant to be talking about wrestling. Finally, it is time for another match, and you could argue that it's our only real wrestling match that we've seen since the opener. It is for the tag team titles. The champions at this time are the Perfect Event, the team of Chuck Palumbo, aka Chuck from Billy and Chuck, and Sean Stasiak, aka the guy who ran into Kurt Angle's milk truck that one time. They are taking on the impossibly large and muscular challengers, Chronic, who get a decent reception on the way to the ring. I'm not too excited though. Yeah, you already know what this match is going to be without me having to spell it out for you, but this is the way it goes anyway. Power moves. The heels trying to weasel out of the match. Power moves. Incompetent refereeing. More power moves. A brawl on the floor. Look at all that cake at ringside, by the way. What an absolute disgrace. Then more power moves. And then double power moves, wow. The pace is really slow, and there is a structure to this tag match, kind of a take on the old classic Southern tag team formula of the heels trying to isolate one of the faces, then we get a hot tag and a bit of an exciting babyface comeback in theory, but honestly, I don't think it's really done that well. There's not a lot of urgency here. More double power moves, first to Palumbo, then some double power moves to Stasiak, and all of a sudden, we have new tag team champions. It's Chronic. Hooray for the new champions, and hooray for muscles. The beaten former champions are devastated by the announce table, and it's worth pointing out at this time that I have no idea what Mark Madden's doing, because as soon as he realizes he's on camera, he starts screaming over the other two commentators, just shouting, "What a match! What a match!" over and over again. I'm like, what are you doing? Are you trying to do like a Bobby Heenan thing where you're like congratulating the heels but they've lost but you're trying to make them feel better? Or are you being a weasel and now taking the side of the face team? But if Bobby Heenan was doing a skit like this, he would have absolutely made it very clear what he was doing because he was really good at comedy. Mark Madden, I have no idea what he's doing, and I find it very annoying. Also, the whole time, he's looking around all self-conscious, like, look how clever I'm being. Is this making sense? Look at me, look how clever. I kind of understand why he gets so much criticism, unfortunately. Or maybe he thinks if he screams, "what a good match," over and over again, then we'll actually start to believe that it was. But sadly, it just wasn't. Back to Ernest the Cat Miller now. That's who we came to see. Ernest the Cat Miller is all over this show. He is inescapable. Jarrett bursts back in to see the commish. Jarrett's basically saying the same thing as we've seen him say in a previous segment anyway. This is very pointless. He's going, "Where's Hulk Hogan? Hogan better be here." Jarrett says to Ernest the Cat Miller, "Listen, if Hogan doesn't show up soon, I'm going to start messing with this show." "Oh no, Jeff, don't mess with this otherwise spellbinding pay-per-view that we've been watching." Double J leaves, and then the Young Dragons pop out and beat up Ernest the Cat Miller. We have 7 matches left on this show. The next one is actually, wow, it's just a normal singles match between Chris Kanyon and Booker T. 2 good wrestlers. Oh my God. Kanyon is at the moment calling himself positively Kanyon. He's doing like a mimicry of Diamond Dallas Page, but in a heelish way. He's also trying to shill his autobiography, which is basically a disguise, and he keeps a brick inside of it as a weapon. Look, I know it sounds rubbish, right? But Kanyon actually made it work. In my opinion, he was kind of one of the better things about the mid-card of WCW at this time. Booker T, meanwhile, we all know him, a legendary five-time WCW champion, but this is before he'd won any of those 5 titles. He's also maybe the best thing about WCW at this point. So, yeah. And without spoiling too much, he does go on to play a very important role later on in the show. Booker takes control very quickly, knocking Kanyon's blonde wig off. It's blonde because he's trying to be DDP. And Kanyon bails to the outside, and Booker picks up the book out of Kanyon's corner of the ring. And the brick falls out, and his plan has been scuppered. And the brick, though, this is the best bit, the brick lands on its end. That's legitimately the best thing we've seen on the show. The referee does his job, he takes away the brick, and meanwhile, Booker goes to the outside following Kanyon, but Kanyon takes control, and he lays the ring steps on top of Booker, and then he hits the ring steps with a chair, and it all goes clang, because wrestling is for children. And I would do well to remember that sometimes, frankly. The match spills back into the ring, one of them tries to use a steel chair, the referee takes it away, and with the ref's back turned, Kanyon grabs the book. He didn't see the brick fall out of the book, so he uses the book. Booker takes a bump, but he's not knocked out. And Kanyon, we get a wonderful bit here of like genius narrative, sort of Pulp Fiction-esque film editing, as we see a shot of the brick on the timekeeper's table, and then we cut back to the ring where Kanyon's looking in the book like, "Where's me brick, man?" Booker T nails the axe kick. And the bookend. 1, 2. Kanyon kicks out. Whoa. Booker heads up top to finish things off, but as promised, Jeff Jarrett runs out to ruin the show, smashing his guitar over Booker T's head. Booker falls into the ring limply. Kanyon finishes him off and picks up the heelish win. Backstage we go again, where Mike Awesome is flirting with Jeff Jarrett's singer lady, because this is very shortly before Mike Awesome would transition into a new gimmick, the Fat Chick Thriller Mike Awesome. I hate Vince Russo. Is nothing serious anymore. Is nothing worth mattering to us anymore as an audience. These aren't heroes and villains anymore. These aren't proxies for our real life hopes and fears and dreams. No, these are stupid one-note characters with often offensive or otherwise just insulting gimmicks. But it's all right because the backstage interviewer is here to restore some professionalism, remind us indeed that we are watching, or supposed to be, a wrestling show. She gets in the middle of the two, Mike Awesome is annoyed at her for throwing off his game, and then she asks him about his opponent tonight, Big Poppy Pump. Can we hire people who know the wrestlers' names? These are basics. I've legitimately got heartburn. I'm getting that annoyed. Oh God, this is actually true. I'm gonna just wait a second. I've got a big bottle of water here. So that's gonna be. I said the British thing for any Americans watching. Bottle of water. Everyone take 5. Mike says, "Look, I've beaten Scott Steiner twice already, and I'm gonna do it again tonight. So don't you worry about that." And then he says to the interviewer, "By the way, don't be jealous just because you aren't as hot as the other woman was." And then we cut back to the arena, and Tony Schiavone says, totally deadpan, "Thank you, Pamela." Anyway, that Mike Awesome Scott Steiner match is for the US title, and it's right now. Mike Awesome is a heel. He's in the New Blood stable. Steiner's a babyface. He's in the millionaire. He is in the Millionaires Club. Steiner is clearly a huge fan of Dragon Gate. Don't check the timeline on that one to see if it's possible or not, as he ambushes Mike Awesome during his entrance with a flying aerial attack. Go, Scotty, go! Mike Awesome, lest we forget, had moments where he was a really good pro wrestler, and he throws Scott Steiner into the crowd. It's quite genuinely exciting. This guy in the crowd is like, oh my god. And then Awesome launches himself crossbody style over the barricade onto Steiner in the crowd. Kind of like what Kazuchika Okada would do 15 years later. It's another reminder of the talent that Russo had at his disposal and was not unable to harness, actually, unwilling to harness. The pair battle back through the crowd and get back in the ring, where Scott Steiner hits a nice belly-to-belly from the second rope, but then gets slammed onto the top rope by the challenger shortly afterwards. Awesome clocks Steiner with the ring bell. WCW had relaxed rules at this point in time, so weapons were kind of sort of allowed sometimes, but not all the time, like when the ref took the chair away in the last match. But anyway, don't think about it too much. They get back in the ring. This is the finishing stretch, right? Wait a minute. Ernest the Cat Miller is coming down the ramp. Ernest the Cat Miller, why don't you go away? I'm sick of you on this show. I'd be a really bad teacher. That was me trying to be angry. I wouldn't be able to tell off. Imagine me trying to tell off a teenager. They'd laugh in my face. Something quite weird happens now as Steiner retakes control of the match and locks Mike Awesome in his finishing submission, the Steiner Recliner. But as that's about to happen, Ernest the Cat Miller gets on the mic and says, oh, don't you do it, Scott. Don't you do it. So Steiner stops that and just knocks the cat off the apron. Now this is weird, yes, but I guess it does kind of make sense. I'll be fair to it. I'll give it a chance because yes, Ernest the Cat Miller has banned the Steiner Recliner, which doesn't sound like it makes any sort of logical sense. Why would you ban the move? But remember, Ernest the Cat Miller is a heel authority figure in the pockets of Bischoff and Russo, presumably, so he does often favour the heels in the new blood over the Millionaires Club. So that does make sense. Is it good? Not really, but does it make sense? Yeah. That's actually not my problem here. My problem here is that at the moment the Cat decided to make his arrival in the match, Mike Awesome was fully in control. He just hit Scott Steiner with the ring bell, and then the Cat appeared knowing that Steiner was going to magically turn things around and then be about to apply the Steiner Recliner, and then the Cat was there in position to be like, hey, you stop it, Scott. But when the Cat arrived, it looked like Mike Awesome was probably going to win the I know that wrestling psychology, a lot of people take it way less seriously than me and they have far happier lives for it, but I just need it to make sense. There's something in my soul that needs, I need this to do better. It's just tiny little things like this that really demonstrate that, yes, this show is famous for like one or two big, ridiculous moments that are an absolute death knell for WCW, but it's the little moments like this that I think really betray the fact that it was rotten to the core. It wasn't just one or two isolated incidents. The whole show did not have enough care put into it. Anyway, now we are into the finishing stretch of the match. Awesome starts hitting big moves on Scott, but Scott's kicking out of everything. So the ref gets bumped, the Cat gets in the ring, and Awesome holds Scott in place so the Cat can give him a super kick, but predictably Steiner moves, and it's Mike Awesome who takes the super kick by accident instead. Now we get a finish that makes me question my own sanity. Steiner sets up to use the Steiner Recliner once again. And they repeat the spot from earlier where the Cat goes on the mic, no, don't you do it, Scott, don't you do it. But Steiner does fully apply the Steiner Recliner now. So the Cat says, right, that's it, ref, call off this match, it's a DQ, and strip that title from Scott Steiner. And the ref does. And that's the finish. That is how this pay-per-view match ends. The commissioner takes the belt and leaves with it. Steiner chases him, clobbers him on the ramp, and then returns to the ring, hits one big final suplex on Mike Awesome, and then Scott Steiner celebrates. But like, why? Why are you happy? As a character in this moment, Scott Steiner, why are you happy? The title has just been unjustly ripped away from you, and you don't care. And the bigger mystery is, why did they book this? Why did WCW Creative write this into the show thinking it would be a good finish to show a paying audience? And not just that, but what if I told you that by the end of the night, there'll be a plot twist down the line involving one of the participants in this match, which renders everything we've seen nonsensical and therefore pointless? Oh no. There's only one way up from here, right? And that's correct. It's time for a trip to the it's time for a trip to the graveyard. Yeah, you might have thought cinematic wrestling matches were invented in the mid-2010s by Matt Hardy and co, and then refined in WWE, I suppose, by things like the Firefly Funhouse match or the Boneyard match. But no, cinematic matches were invented right here in WCW, baby. So this match features Vampiro, right? Vampiro's a heel, and recently possibly ended the career of the legendary Sting by setting him on fire and then throwing his stunt double off the top of the Tron at the previous pay-per-view. Will we ever see Sting again? Who knows? So Vampiro has now moved on to his next feud, which is with one of his former stablemates in the Dark Carnival, who's now left and is a babyface. I'm talking about the Demon, Dale Torborg, previously known as the Kiss Demon, then the Demon, and then Dale Torborg, but now kind of known as the Demon again. Sometimes they call him Dale Torborg. Anyway, he's a babyface, and he has a fiancée as well, Asia. She is also in this storyline. That's because Vampiro tried to kidnap Asia, but then the Demon saved her, and then it's all led up to this graveyard match. The rules are, the match is going to take place in a graveyard somewhere else, not at the arena. They don't really say where, and the winner is the one who can get back to the arena first. My advice would be, don't try to even fight your opponent. Just spend the days in the build-up to the event really investing in a watertight travel schedule with a plan A, a plan B, maybe even a plan C, and you'll win the match without even having to throw a punch. Anyway, the match begins. We are in the graveyard now, and this is literally the lighting they showed us on the broadcast. It's not my fault. This is it's just going to have to do. I'm sorry. The Demon and Asia enter the graveyard, and the entire match, right, the Demon spends the whole match either telling Asia to stay out of trouble or watching her get herself into trouble and then having to save her. Why did you bring her to this? Why am I shouldn't be trying to even make sense of this. The Demon and Asia search for Vampiro. Where is he? Hiding in the graveyard. And then he's in a tree, and he jumps out the tree onto the Demon, and then the Demon and Vampiro are brawling. I'd love to show you the tree spot, but it's literally like nearly unwatchable. Honestly, the lighting is so bad. I can't believe, once again, that people paid for this show. It's on YouTube for free, mercifully, these days, so you can find it now if you want to watch the graveyard match. I wouldn't recommend it. Vampiro knocks the Demon into an open grave, and then Vampiro grabs Asia and runs off with her. Here's a rare moment with okay lighting, and the Demon follows them. And then he finds Asia alone and unharmed. And he's like, what happened? Where's Vampiro? And then Vampiro appears from a lake behind him and drags him into the lake, and they're fighting in the lake like splish. Splishy splish. I am losing my mind. It is my fault as well, but it's mainly this show's fault. Same thing happens now. Vampiro runs off with Asia again. The Demon follows them again and finds Asia on her own. And then Vampiro pops out of a nearby coffin and spits red mist into the Demon's face. Vampiro smashes a cinder block over the Demon's head, rolls him into the coffin, rolls that into a grave, and then heads back to the arena. Don't worry, we'll be back to catch up on more Vampiro-related antics later on in this show. This is great action. How can we possibly follow such pulse-pounding drama? That's right, with a backstage interview with the franchise, Shane Douglas. Let's go. At this time, Shane Douglas is a heel in the New Blood stable, and tonight he is wrestling his former tag partner and friend, Buff Bagwell. So very interesting indeed. Mean Gene finds Shane to be in a very confident mood about his chances. He guarantees victory over Buff tonight. How can he be so sure? Interesting. We'll find out why he's so confident in a little while. Bagwell is returning from suspension here after, according to his Wikipedia page, attacking and hurling racial slurs at a crew member backstage in May. Oh. So despite previously being a heel tag team partner of Shane Douglas's, this real-life incident has now somehow transformed Buff into a babyface, and we're going to be cheering him on tonight. Oh. Before the match begins, we are all reminded that we can apply to be Goldberg's guest manager. This is so exciting. Let's all apply. Oh, damn it. At the bell, we get some really good psychology here as Bagwell leads the crowd in a chant of "Franchise sucks, franchise sucks." Shane Douglas, not a happy boy about that, no siree. Bagwell beats Shane Douglas around the ringside area. This woman's like, you do suck, franchise. But actually Shane Douglas turns the tide and then exposes a bit of the floor underneath one of the ring mats. And we see how they finally managed to clean up the cake from earlier by literally just flipping the ring mats over. That's awful. Douglas then goes for a pile driver on the exposed floor of all things, but Bagwell gets out of it, but does get hit with a rather unique low blow shortly afterwards. Back to the ring we go, where Bagwell somehow sells a rolling snapmare like this. Anyway, the match continues, and then, oh yeah, it's time for a run-in. Tori Wilson is making her way down the ramp. Now, the last time we saw Tori in the year 2000, she was betraying her heel boyfriend Billy Kidman and helping him lose a feud against Hulk Hogan. Not that, I mean, how did Hogan need any help to win that feud anyway? But what's she doing here? Well, it looks as though she's about to align with Buff Bagwell. He is the stuff, after all. She slaps Shane Douglas in the head. Buff and she share a little kissy, and Buff does his pose, and then Tori kicks him in the balls. It's the same as what she did the last pay-per-view, but this time it's on a babyface. She's turned heel again. Vince Russo doesn't see Tori Wilson as a character on the show, just as a kind of a betrayal machine. In a weirdly similar way to the opening match on the show, though, this isn't the finish of the match, despite really feeling like it ought to be. Instead, Buff kicks out of a big move from Shane. Shane kicks out of a big move from Buff. And finally, Buff goes up top to hit his finisher, the blockbuster, but Tori Wilson grabs his leg. Douglas takes advantage, hitting a lifting inverted atomic drop off the second rope, then an atomic drop normal edition, and picking up the win. This bit really annoys me. I know a lot has already annoyed me on the show. Because the commentary team react like they've never seen a move like this before. The second move of the two. They're like, oh my god, what was that? There's one in the match as well. Rock on, dude. Two problems here. One, the move's just not that exciting. Like, the crowd get actively quieter when Shane hits it. And number two, what possessed Shane Douglas on this earth to hit a more exciting version of the move off the middle rope first, before then hitting a normal, more boring version of that move and debuting it as his brand new exciting finisher? Nobody's brain works on this pay-per-view. Anyway, Tori is revealed as Shane's new manager. And even if we ignore the fact that the real effectiveness of any shock in this situation is completely nullified by the fact that Tori did not have any involvement with either man before this match took place, also, it's really bad because Tori, if we watch it back, comes down to the ring when Shane Douglas was in control of the match anyway. Exactly the same problem that I flipped out about when Ernest the Cat Miller came down when Mike Awesome was in control anyway, even though he was helping Mike Awesome. It's okay. Anyway, thankfully, none of that matters because we cut backstage, and thankfully, my word, Hulk Hogan is finally here. We get Jeff Jarrett's reaction to this in a backstage promo with Mean Gene. He tells Gene, have you ever seen The Usual Suspects before, Gene? Implying there's going to be a big swerve coming. And there is indeed a big swerve coming, just not in the way that I think anybody watching this would have perhaps anticipated. Okay, so Jarrett's the heel champion. He's a member of the New Blood. That's easy enough to understand. Hulk Hogan is recently back in the promotion after, well, he never really left, but he took a break. He was on hiatus. He's now back in the thick of it. And he's a babyface now, but behind the scenes, he is clashing with Vince Russo all the time because he has creative control written into his contract. He's also mates with Eric Bischoff. Bischoff and Russo are clashing as well. It's all quite a mess. It's a big power struggle backstage with Hogan a key player. All that tension and all the clashing between Russo and Hogan and between Russo and Bischoff, that all comes to a head on this show very, very soon. And it's actually the last time we'll see Hulk Hogan ever in WCW. So it's time for the title match to take place right now. Not the main event of the show. Very fishy indeed. Why is that? We'll find out. I honestly burst out laughing when I realised they got Michael Buffer in for this one, as if it was going to be some kind of Titanic matchup. Jarrett's music plays, The Chosen One. But Vince Russo comes out. Oh no. Jarrett does come out next, gets in the ring. Hogan comes out, his music plays. Jarrett gets out the ring, goes and stands up near the top of the ramp in kind of a weirdly sort of muted pose. Hogan's back in the ring. He cuts a quick promo in character at this stage, saying, come on, Jarrett, get down here. I'm going to kick your ass, buddy. That's not how Hogan talks at all. Famously not. Jeff Jarrett gets in the ring, lays down on the canvas, and Hogan looks confused. And Vince Russo gestures to Hogan as if to be like, go on then. Go on, pin him. This is what you wanted. Vince Russo throws the WCW title belt into the ring and walks off up the ramp. And the match is technically still going on. Hulk Hogan gets on the mic and cuts his now famous worked shoot promo, I think we're safe to say. Most people agree that this part of the show was meant to happen. Hogan shouts after a departing Russo saying, you know what? This is the reason that this company's in the damn shape it's in, because of bullcrap like this. Gets the biggest pop of the night, by the way. Running down the product that the people are sat in the stands watching gets people going, yeah, it does suck. Hogan pins Jarrett, who immediately gets up and walks off. And then Hogan slowly leaves too with the belt. And that's it for now. That is our big title match for the night. Right then. There'll be more on this later, don't worry. It's worth mentioning throughout this segment how obviously briefed, I believe anyway, that the announce team have been for this moment. Because throughout, they're being really annoying. They're going like, this wasn't on the run sheet. We didn't talk about this in the production meeting, guys. This is all real. Is this a swerve? It feels very hammy. It's also annoying because they're basically saying like everything else that you've just watched, that wasn't real, but this is real. Everything else doesn't really matter, but this is the real stuff. Of course, this is just the first part of like a 2-part major drama that takes place on this night. I'll give a more comprehensive breakdown of what we just saw at the end of the second part. But for now, Vampiro's back from the graveyard, lads. Oh, hey! The tonal whiplash here is one of the most astounding things I've ever seen in the ordering of a pay-per-view card. Let's follow up this ultra-worky, shooty segment with the conclusion of the spoopy graveyard match, you guys. It's amazing. Vampiro actually passes a departing Hogan backstage and we see them cross paths and Vampiro then has to come out and make his entrance like, oh, very spooky. And how are we meant to take any of that seriously now after what we've just seen? Vampiro gets on the mic and he's talking about how he destroyed the Demon tonight and he's also previously destroyed Sting as well. And he's in the death spot of all death spots, maybe in wrestling history, because the crowd are just like, boo, like they don't care. How can you care after the Hogan Russo stuff? But Vampiro's promo is interrupted by a fleet of druids in Sting masks who all carry a casket into the arena. And Vampiro goes to confront them on the outside, like what the hell's going on here? And then Vampiro gets jumped by a taller druid who emerges from the casket, beats Vampiro down and lays him in the casket. And presumably this is the returning Sting. I kind of get the logic here. Like, just in case everybody's real annoyed by the Hogan Russo stuff, let's follow that up with the return of Sting. Big beloved babyface. I get a semblance of the logic. The only problem is, there's no official confirmation that this is indeed Sting. Once again, the lighting is a shambles. There's all these flashing light effects and thunder and lightning sounds being played. Way too many bodies in there. We also never get the moment, the reveal of it. Oh, it was me, it was Sting. That never happens. What are they thinking? It's almost time for part 2 of the Hogan Russo stuff. But first, we've got a backstage interview with Goldberg. I totally forgot about his match with Kevin Nash, but that is still going ahead. Not much to report with this mini segment. Goldberg says he's going to kick Kevin Nash's ass, rip up Scott Hall's contract, and the Outsiders will be done forever. Now it's the real stuff on the show. Not the wrestling, the politics. Vince Russo comes back out, and he's all sad about what we've just seen. Oh, I know, I'm a big Vampiro fan as well, and I'm sad he got beaten down by Sting too. Oh, the Hogan stuff, yeah. What we are about to see is a now infamous shoot promo from Vince Russo, but debate still rages over how much of a shoot this actually was. Let's see what he says first, and then I can offer the opposing points of view afterwards. Russo says since he started in WCW, he's had to deal with ridiculous politicking behind the scenes. But Russo still turns up to work and still does this because he's doing it for the people who bust their asses and don't get a shred of the credit of people like Hogan. He name drops Jarrett and Booker as positive examples of this. But Russo says that Hogan is the very opposite of that and he doesn't care about WCW. He only cares about himself. He then reveals the reason for what we saw earlier. Basically, Russo implies that Hogan exercised his creative control backstage, didn't want to lose this match to Jarrett, wanted to actually beat him for the title against Russo's booking plans, and that's why the match went down like we saw it earlier on, with Jarrett laying down and Russo kind of giving Hogan the belt, but in a form of protest almost. Like, you want it so badly, there you go, let's just have this farce of a match anyway. But it's weird because that bit with Hogan and Jarrett is generally accepted these days to be an incident that everybody was in on. Hogan knew that was going to happen. So now Russo's coming out here, though, and talking about it to the fans as if... See, this is where it gets weird. As far as the fans needed to know on the night, if that was the plan that everybody agreed on, that's fine. But then why is Russo now coming out again and really sticking the boot in and kind of complicating things further, kind of getting his heat back in a way? He starts making big decisions as well. He starts saying things like, I've now reversed the decision of that title match. Jeff Jarrett is still officially the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. And by the way, Hulk Hogan, you are never going to see him in WCW ever again. Which turns out to be true. Yes, it's a huge result for our boy, the Chosen One. But he's still got to wrestle tonight because Russo then books a seemingly impromptu title match replacement match between Jarrett and this new challenger, Booker T. But, you know, if we look at what happened earlier on in the show with Jarrett costing Booker his match against Chris Kanyon, you can see that this probably was planned in advance. Another clue that at least part of the drama was already a plan is that Jarrett versus Hogan was never the main event of the night. And if it had been a normal match that was going ahead, of course it should have been the main event. It's two big stars, it's the title match. The fact that they didn't make it the main event surely implies that everybody knew what was going to go on. But it's that bit there, that Vince Russo promo after Hogan had left, that's the bit that everybody argues about. Russo wraps up the promo by saying that Booker and Jarrett are two examples of people who deserve the real credit around here, and Hulk Hogan is nothing more than a big bald son of a bitch. And then Russo leaves. Right then, let's dig into this. I have to give at this stage a huge shout out to OSW Review for their episode on Bash at the Beach. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video if you've never seen it before. And I just have to give them a shout out for generally being one of the best things about wrestling YouTube over the past decade plus. I've always been a fan of OSW Review, love those guys. But also I have to give them credit because in that episode, in that link in the description, they do an amazing, detailed breakdown of the points of view of all the major people involved in this angle and what everybody claims to be true and what might or might not be. It's very much worth a watch. And with the help of that OSW Review video, I'm going to try and sort of simplify it. But I would highly recommend watching their more detailed breakdown. But this is basically the situation. So most parties seem to agree that the first bit with Hogan and Jarrett and Jeff Jarrett laying down in the ring and Hogan pinning him, winning the belt and cutting the promo on Vince Russo and saying, this is why the company's in the shape it's in because of you, Russo. Most people agree that this was all part of the plan that everybody was involved in and everybody agreed on. It was a worked shoot designed to fool the fans. And I agree with that. I think that seems to be pretty much true. Especially if we take into account the reactions of Hogan and the announce team, which seem a little bit too hammy to be totally legitimate. And also, most parties seem to agree that Hogan was then scheduled to take time off away from the on-screen action and then come back at Halloween Havoc, still in possession of the physical belt that he took with him on this night, and he was going to have a champion versus champion unification match against whoever becomes champion at that time. But then Russo's promo, when he comes out afterwards and then cuts that big rant about Hogan, that's where opinion starts to differ. Eric Bischoff claims that Russo here is massively going into business for himself. He was never meant to go back out into the arena, he was never meant to cut that promo, and he was never meant to say that Hogan was gone from the company. Meanwhile though, Vince Russo himself says the opposite. He says that that was just an extension of the plan. That was always meant to happen. Everybody agreed on him going back out there and cutting that promo. And it was only afterwards, when Hogan saw the reaction of everybody to this, that's when Hogan decided to get annoyed and, in Russo's opinion, pretend that he got screwed over by Russo. But Russo's saying no, this whole night went to plan, agreed by everybody. For what it's worth, Hogan then filed a real lawsuit against Vince Russo and against WCW's parent company for defamation of character, but the case was thrown out of court. So yes, regardless of who you agree with, regardless of whether you believe Russo or Bischoff or whatever, there are still so many things wrong here. First of all, the circumstances which led to something like this being able to come about. Hogan's creative control and alleged refusal to lose to Jarrett. The impossible creative situation backstage with Russo and Bischoff constantly clashing with each other. The fact that nobody seemed to care that any of this would make WCW look even worse than it already did by this stage in 2000. And as I mentioned earlier as well, I have an issue with worked shoots anyway. I really don't like the idea of like, hey, disregard everything else you've seen on this show already, but this stuff, this is actually important. To me, that's a recipe for disaster, and it just upstages the whole point of wrestling. And moreover, if we just take a step back from the situation, just look at it from a wider point of view for a second, I think this is the sign of a company that has totally lost sight of what it's trying to do, has totally lost sight of itself. You're a wrestling promotion. Just put on a wrestling show. The very fact that multiple big names backstage thought that their rampant egos and their political infighting was somehow worth putting on camera and making the central point of the show and overshadowing all the actual wrestling rather than just putting on a good show with some good wrestling matches. I think that is also a big reason why this is viewed and remembered as just such a notorious bad moment in wrestling history. This isn't just the point of no return for WCW as a company, as a wrestling promotion. I think this is also the point where pro wrestling's obsession with testing the boundaries of the fourth wall finally reaches a breaking point. And it had been building up to that point throughout the 90s, but this is where it all breaks and where the central theme of pro wrestling, the idea that this is all supposed to be real, totally devours itself. It's not good. It's actually bad. It's actually bad pro wrestling in my opinion. Regardless of who's telling the truth in the fallout. I don't really care too much about that. I just can't believe it was allowed to get this far. Like, if we just think about it at the time, imagine you're a wrestling fan in 2000, you've sat down, you've bought the pay-per-view, you turn it on, and this is what happens. You'd be like, what am I watching? It was never ever going to work. Right. On with the show, because we're not even done. The next match, as we know, is Kevin Nash versus Goldberg for the fate of Scott Hall's WCW contract, if we can bring ourselves to even care about any of this. On his way to the arena, Nash passes Scott Steiner backstage and says, hey Scotty, they're stablemates in the Millionaires Club, remember? He goes, hey Scotty, watch my back out there. Steiner goes, no, you're right, I'm busy. It's great friendship there. This is foreshadowing. Nash makes his entrance, really cool entrance, of course, as always. Wolfpack is back, causing master. Goldberg makes his entrance, really cool entrance, as always. Sparks and the Goldberg, the dum, dum, dum. He's got Hall's contract sticking out the front of his trunks, and I'm like, this could be, I'm quite hyped for this. This could be good. Lock up to start the match. Goldberg takes control. No, wait, Nash takes control. And I'm like, oh my God, after everything, and the graveyard, and the worked shoots, and the food fight, and they're actually wrestling each other again. What? Bill runs through some signature moves and it looks like Nash is in trouble, but then he catches Goldberg with a choke slam out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, well, it's heating up now. Here we go. It's time for another run-in. God damn it. And this time it's Scott Steiner. Oh, he's going to watch his friends back after all. That's good, right? With Steiner cheering him on, Kevin Nash avoids a spear attempt from Goldberg and sets him up for the jackknife powerbomb. And then Steiner gets in the ring and attacks Kevin Nash instead. You knew it was coming. Nash fights off Steiner but leaves himself in the process wide open for a spear from Goldberg. Jackhammer. 1, 2, 3. Goldberg wins and celebrates with his new stablemate, a new member of the New Blood now, Scott Steiner. The heels rip up Scott Hall's contract. He was never going to come back. Hey, screw you, Kevin Nash. It's not good. I'm annoyed that I let myself try to be optimistic about this match. 2 reasons this is so bad, actually. 1, why try to have a swervy heel turn so soon after the mother of all worked shoot angles? In terms of screwy, weird wrestling stuff, it's just a drop in the ocean. And secondly, what on earth was that all about between Steiner and Mike Awesome before? What was the point of any of that? The Cat stripped the belt from Steiner, but now he's stablemates with Mike Awesome, and now neither of them have the belt. Were they in cahoots, or did they not know this was going to happen? Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm putting more thought into this than I think Russo did at the time. Right. Anyway, last but not least, the main event, the real main event. Booker T and Jeff Jarrett's title match. Booker is in the back with Mean Gene, and despite all the stuff that's gone on in the show that has lived on in infamy in wrestling, Booker cuts the promo of the night here. Great character motivation in this promo anyway. Booker coming to terms with the fact that he's not only been given a second match tonight out of nowhere, but it's for the title. There's a great line here as well from Booker who says he doesn't have a clue what's going on. All he knows is that opportunity has knocked and he'll be damned if he doesn't answer the door. Nice. Mikey B is back, having probably learned far too much about the carny intricacies of the wrestling business over the past hour or so. And it's time for the actual main event of the evening, Jeff Jarrett defending against Booker T. Jarrett mugs with the belt at the start of the match as if to be like, whoa, look at you stupid fans, I'm still the champion, look how great I am. But it's hard to get on board with that because we have just been told by Vince Russo that Jarrett behind the scenes is actually very hardworking and deserves way more credit than politicians like Hulk Hogan. And I don't know whether the fans think they should cheer or boo Jarrett. I don't think Jarrett knows whether he should be getting heat or encouraging cheers. The whole lens through which we view wrestling has been shattered by this point. Early on in the match, we get a crowd brawl. I think I was second or third of the night, but at least the crowd are excited by this. And as the two guys make their way around the arena, the announce team can't stop talking about what a totally radical and unexpected night this has been. Shut up. Because WCW here are saying, right, enough of all the bull crap. This is real wrestling between two great wrestlers. But at the same time, they cannot help but keep reminding us that none of it's real. I think Jarrett realizes the same thing actually, because he shuts them up by throwing Booker into their laps and then hitting a pile driver on Booker on the announce table. Back inside, the champ looks to finish the challenger off and soften his legs up for the figure 4 leg lock, but Booker rolls him into a surprise inside cradle, 1-2, but Jarrett kicks out. Jarrett does get the hold locked in, but Booker bravely turns over and reverses the pressure, forcing the champion to break the hold. And now it's time for Booker's exciting comeback. He hits the axe kick, but then gets sent into the referee and the ref goes down, and I'm like, have we not had enough run-ins or enough shenanigans for one night? Jarrett tries to hit Booker with the title belt, but Booker gains control of it. And for a horrible second, I think he's going to do a Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 41. Like, he's too pure to you. He can't do it. He can't. Thankfully, Booker doesn't do what Cody did at Mania 41. Instead, he actually just rears back and just clocks Jarrett with the gold. Go on, Booker. The referee recovers, but is beaten up enough that it's only a slow count, and Jarrett kicks just out on the stroke of 3. Jarrett regains control with a low blow and sets up a chair in the corner of the ring, but Booker sends Jarrett into it, and that gets another near fall. Jarrett does the petulant heel champ thing and tries to ruin the match, hitting his finisher on the ref. He then grabs his guitar, heads up top, and leaps off, attempting to smash it over Booker's head, but Booker counters it, catching Jarrett in position for the bookend, which he nails just as a replacement referee slides into the ring. 1, 2, 3, and Booker T wins the first of his 5 famous WCW championships. After all the nonsense and all the crap, it's actually an unlikely feel-good end to the show. And I'm not just saying that because Russo told us about an hour ago what a deserving champion Booker T would be. No. I've done a few episodes centered around WCW pay-per-views, both on this channel and back at Cultaholic as well, and I have to say that Booker T has pretty much always been a highlight of whatever pay-per-view I've been watching, regardless of whatever ridiculous position he was put in. At this moment in time, he really was a very deserving champion. He truly was a bit of a diamond in the rough here, and it's really good to see him rewarded for this with a big title win and a big moment. It's just a shame that it came about as a result of such ridiculous circumstances. Of course, despite many people heralding this as the end of WCW, the company would kind of limp on, I guess, until the spring of 2001, where it was bought out by Vince McMahon. And you know what? It was sad. It was a sad end for a promotion with such proud traditions in old school Southern wrestling, traditions which were totally subverted to game-changing effect in the mid-90s first of all, and then taken way too far in the late 90s, resulting in a company that had completely lost touch with itself by this point. And that was Very Weird Wrestling. Hooray! Haven't we had fun? Isn't this happy? Thanks very much for watching. I have been Jack the Jobber. Thank you again to the people on Patreon for supporting the channel, and those in the upper tier for voting for this. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks. And yes, hope you've enjoyed. Leave comments, like, share, subscribe, all that sort of good stuff. And stay tuned. I'll see you very, very soon.